Hey there, Heather. Hello there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another Degrassi video, and we are redoing the top 10 worst Degrassi parents into this 2025 version. Things have changed in the past 3 years since I did this list and all that, and some of the subtle differences is that number 10 is the Bandaris. Well, the Bandaris are not in this list. They actually were made to be into good parents and all that. So, at the start they were bad parents, but it was like a redemption song. It's like Audra too. When I did my top 10 good parents, is that, she started out bad and getting on everyone's nerves, but she started to mellow out and become more likable. So the problem, I think, is that, it's up for interpretation, of course. So, yeah, 9 of my top 10 worst parents from the list I did 3 years ago are here. And what I did is I did a post saying, well, who deserves to get spot number 10 and all that. And I got one of them. Now I split the polls up. I had two polls, 1 to 5, 6 to 10, because, the top five who made my poll from 2022 would be the 1 to 5 guaranteed because, got to give them how creepy and bad they were. And they were really deserving of the top five of the list. And then I did 6 to 10, adding the person that Reddit said I should add. So, with that in mind, we'll get at it. Now, there will be a change. I know that at the end of the episode, you'll see the voting results. However, it's key to see that I last place in the 1 to 5 vote didn't get a vote. So I decided to change it up, and I am moving uh, the winner of the 6 to 10 vote up to number 5, and dropping the 1 to 5 loser to number 6. All right, so here we go. Number 10 is Hatzalakos. You'll be thinking, are you crazy, Cutter? I could also say Michelle's father from Degrassi High because he really was mistreating Michelle terribly and was not happy with Michelle being with BLT and all that in Degrassi High and all that. It was racist and all that. But unfortunately, there are a lot of racist parents and all that. So, I just couldn't promote that. But the fact of the matter is, Hatzalakos has to be a terrible parent. I mean, the fact that, the whole thing with Peter was the massive thing. The big thing was that um, in the whole season 5 thing, Peter blackmailing Manny and then posting her video for everyone to see and causing a lot of friction within Manny's school life and all that. And that is kind of leading to one of the um, parents on this list. So, anyhow, Hatzilakos is seen admonishing Peter at the end of Venus Part 2, and Emma and Manny look stunned because Peter is Hatzilakos' son. But what does Peter get? A slap on the wrist, a 6-week detention stay, and all that for that. I mean, Hatzilakos should have thrown Peter out of school or given him a massive suspension and reprimand and all that. But it seemed that Peter got away with it. You could also say that Peter's dad also is a terrible parent. In a sense, kind of feeding Peter's white privilege, if you will. I should have done that, but TLTL. That means too little, too late. Hatzilakos, as it seemed, was more caring to try to get Peter's love than anything else. She was Principal Degrassi, and she couldn't handle her own son who planted drugs in Sean's locker. Somehow it had to have come out that he did that to Sean. I mean, I wish Emma had basically stepped to Hatzilakos and told her about Peter's problems and all that, and forced Peter to say something to Hatzilakos in front of Emma. Because then Emma would have been in a lot of people's good books, in a sense. But let it be known that, for a bad Raditch and Snake art as principal and all that, well, Raditch didn't have a child. I don't think he was ever married. And Snake had Emma and all that. They were caring people in a sense. Like Hatzilakos was a good principal, but a bad parent. Something those two didn't do. All right, number 9 on the list is Rick's parents. You know, Rick Murray, his parents. That guy who should not be mentioned, but is mentioned. Why I put them on the list is they were blissfully ignorant, and having a firearm in Rick's easy clutches can't be understated. So what we get from Rick's parents in season 3 and 4 is that his father's a traveling salesman. He's rarely there for his family. I thought he would be there for the funeral, the visitation of Rick in Back in Black. He must have been, and all that. They just didn't acknowledge it. But the fact is, Rick's mom was basically the glue that held the family together and was blissfully ignorant and, you know, encouraging of Rick and all that. Rick had to have cried crocodile tears though to those two because of the fact that he must have told his parents that he was just being bullied out of Degrassi. He had done something to Terry and it was just an accident and he's fearful for his life. I think he just basically played with his mom's emotions like a fiddle. But the fact is that, you know, Rick's mom basically was very ignorant. I mean, at the visitation and all that, she still like grieves over Rick like he's a good guy, even though that Rick took a gun to the school, shot somebody, and nearly shot somebody else. Like, you know, she had her own problems. I feel that Rick's mom had her own problems because of the fact that now that Rick's violent tendencies have come to light, she's going to be investigated, and her husband too. I wouldn't put it past the police to basically put them both in like some kind of probation or like massive punishment for having the gun that was easily accessible to Rick and all that. Rick may have been the shooter, but the gun was easily accessible. Why? I don't know. And they probably had to flee Toronto. Just saying. Number 8 is Casey's dad, who kind of had the influence on Casey being not being a good dad. Now, Casey was introduced in season 8 as this guy in the gifted class alongside Allie, Claire, and Connor. Now, Degrassi was trying to bring the magic of season 1 together. Allie, like Manny, was a boy crazy teenager. Claire, like Emma, was supposed to be this cause girl. Connor was supposed to be like Toby, the geek. And Casey was supposed to be like Sean, the bad boy, and all that. But Casey was living in a group home because his mom, I think, was in prison for a drug charge or something like that. And Casey's dad was also in prison too. So logically, what ends up happening is that Casey has her his thing with Jenna, and impregnates her, and then Casey doesn't seem to be a perfect dad. I mean, Jenna did tell him to play basketball, but Casey was just flirting over Marisol. Casey was probably just airing out his grievances, and Marisol thought that Casey hated Jenna. But yeah, Casey couldn't be a parent. I think he, I think with his parents not really taking much care of him, well, except for his mom when she actually comes out of prison and gets Casey back. Casey's mom was decent, but Casey's dad got out of prison and was looking for them, and then Casey and his mom had to flee at the possible part. And this was the one that the Reddit community said should be on the top 10 list. And like Casey's dad's problems may have influenced Casey. Who knows? Who cares? So anyway, number 7 is Manny's dad. I nearly put Joseph Santos at number 6, but I decided that it didn't work out. So I'm going to put him at number 7. He did tie for second with Casey's dad for the vote for 6 to 10, but I think that Manny's dad was a little bit worse than Casey's dad. And a little bit of NG bias on my part because, I grew up in the NG era. So Manny's dad seemed to be a decent father and all that, but there were signs that he was not really a great dad. As Manny, when she got impregnated in season 3 by Craig, wasn't sure if she should tell her dad because she shares with Spike that they'll probably send her to a convent in the Philippines. They're from the Philippines. So Anyway, um, Maddie's dad comes into prominence in season 5 in Venus when Manny borrows her dad's credit card to pay for boob implants, trying to improve her acting career, but then gets cold feet about it, mostly because she wanted the $3,000 to bribe Peter so that the video of her drunk and flashing her breasts does not appear on camera to anybody. But unfortunately, that fails miserably. The charge goes back on the credit card, which is nice, but of course, Joseph's going to see that. He yells at Manny, calls her a slut. He does raise a good point, and this is the only good thing about him. He does raise a good point, saying that I didn't work my butt off so that you could be a loose woman, so you could be this way. I mean, if he had basically just said that I didn't work this way for you to take advantage of me or to, be a girl that people might take advantage of, that makes sense. I mean, that's probably what he was after, but he said the wrong verbiage. He basically kicks Manny out of the house for not standing down. Well, he doesn't want her to do her acting. I mean, I understand because, Manny's acting is clouding her academic thing. But, I mean, there are actors who are very smart. I mean, let's say Reese Witherspoon. She was pretty smart, even though she was in Legally Blonde. She was actually quite smart. She is quite smart. But the fact is that Manny refused to bow down to him and he kicks her out. And worst of all, Manny's mom doesn't really protect Manny and all that. She kind of does and doesn't, but she basically is submissive. And that's the word I learned. That in most cultures, it is submissive for the mother I mean, for the wife to submit to her husband, which is kind of dumb in a sense. I know in the Bible it kind of says that, but it's not really vague about it. So, anyway, yeah, Manny's dad was harsh and all that. Manny stayed with Emma until JT stabbing and all that. And he was a little bit controlling of Manny in season 6 and 7, to the point that Manny tried to have a fake relationship with Jade to try to get her parents off her back, and it didn't completely work. All right, so the new number 6 on the list is Zoe's mom. I'm surprised she didn't get a vote in the 1 to 5 poll, but yeah, because of that, I'm going to go with Zoe's mom at number 6 and all that. Now, Zoe's mom tells Zoe to go to Paris with the Degrassi kids in season 13 to try to get to know them and all that because she's a new kid and all that. Zoe seems sweet towards Maya, but then she somehow decides to cyber shame Maya and post Maya's head on some naked photos. And Maya is now being blasted over the internet and ashamed. She writes a song and then Maya gets kicked out by Simpson. She gets mad that Zoe's not getting punished for what she's doing. And Maya was being doxxed and all that. And swatted in a sense. Maya's mom kind of is bad for, you know, not helping her daughter, but she was trying to help um Maya out after everything gets looked after. But you know, the problem was that Zoe got away with it by convincing Maya's mom it was a mistake, and Zoe's mom tries her best to keep Zoe in Degrassi by saying that she had a learning disability to avoid her being expelled. But the truth comes out that when Zoe actually comes out of the closet, her mom kicks her out for being gay and all that. But also for the fact that with Zoe coming out as being gay and not getting any roles and all that, Zoe's mom couldn't live off of her daughter. Sometimes some parents do that. I think Jeanette McCurdy's mom, for example, lived off her daughter and all that. Was a stage mom. And I think Zoe's mom was kind of a stage mom, if you will. So what ends up happening is that, Zoe moves in with Grace and all that, and Zoe's mom does not want anything to do with her daughter, especially in the final episode when Zoe's valedictorian, and she isn't so sure because Zoe having being gay and all that. Now, I can't fault Soy's mom for being mad that Soy brought Rasha to Soy's mom's second wedding because, you know, it like Soy was trying to tell her mom that she wasn't gay, and Soy's mom that she was gay, and Soy's mom basically said that it's some kind of bluff. I understand that, but I can understand Soy's mom's anger. But Soy's mom decides to send Soy's dad with stuff for Soy to go to college and all that. She just couldn't handle the shame. I mean, who's going to call her out on it? Nobody. I originally thought that, oh, because she's Roman Catholic, she hates her daughter because she's religious and the religious bias. But no, that's not actually true. I think with Zoe not getting roles and not financially supporting Zoe's mom, she had to either find a job or marry sugar daddy. And guess who she picked? Yes, she did. All right, so let's finish off well, here we go. Number five, and who jumps into the 1 to 5 poll is Alex's mom. Now, Alex had a tough home life and all that. That kind of leads her to being part of the sugar bandits, the candy bandits. I always say candy bandits, but never say sugar bandits. Never mind. So yeah, the candy bandits in season 3, being the tough girl and all that, who actually gets her butt handed to her by Emma in a fight, which is funny. But when Emma's provoked, whammo, you're dead meat. So anyway, Alex's mom was actually being abused by her boyfriends and all that. And Alex and her mom had to live in shelters for the longest time and all that. And Alex had to take care of her mom. We can be sympathetic towards Alex with that whole situation and why she hates Rick being at the school and being an abuser of women. She tries to tell Radish that, and Radish refuses to listen, or Radish just blows her off. But yeah, it's just shocking how Alex's mom is basically submissive and all that. And the worst part of being submissive is that Alex and her mom are threatened with eviction. Alex strips at a gentleman's club, and guess what Alex's mom does with that money? Not pay the rent, not pay for the lights. Boom. She bails her boyfriend out of jail. And Alex is like shocked. And she would do such a thing. The cycle of abuse. Am I right? Not just terrible. But the problem for um, uh, Alex is that now she has nowhere to go. She doesn't want to be with her mom because of the whole volatile situation, and I can't blame Alex one bit. So Paige manages to take her in, but Paige mishandles Alex, and then she goes to Ajax. Well, Alex does. All right. There was a tie for third, this but technically I will break the tie. So number 4 is Mayor Hollingsworth. Reason why I put him there? Well, it's like the way he wanted to put his kids under the bus to advance his career and seemed not to care about their mental issues. Hollingsworth, when we first get introduced to the clan, is running for mayor and trying to be mayor of Toronto. He has 3 teenagers, Miles, Frankie, and Hunter, who go to Degrassi. And Hollingsworth decides to do a whistle stop tour for the Bear Toronto in Degrassi, promising Degrassi a new wing. It's like, Degrassi doesn't look like they need a new wing. Really? And I think it's like nepotism because, with his 3 kids attending Degrassi, he wanted to help Degrassi out and probably just sucking up to Simpson. But the fact of the matter is that, yeah, his kids all suffered under his regime. I mean, Miles had his mental breakdown and also, his tendency to be with Tristan, which Mary Hollingsworth tries to sweep under the rug but can't. He wants Frankie to take responsibility for the Degrassi nudes so that, you know, he doesn't lose his job as mayor. And Hunter will, Mary Hollingsworth's behavior, chauvinistic behavior, may have rubbed off on Hunter and why he may be chauvinistic. Although I must say that Hunter, when he pulls off Yale, I mean, he likes girls and all that. That's understandable, but the way he handled it was not the smartest thing in the world. And people thought that Hunter was an incel. Maybe, maybe not. But the fact of the matter is that his parenting skills were terrible. He just cared about more about his career than their mental well-being. Even Mrs. Hollingsworth was bad too. She wanted to be in the public figure thing and knew the perks and all that, and not care about her kids. But yeah, Mayor Hollingsworth kind of does mellow out near the end where things are tough. I just feel that Hollingsworth just basically used his clout to force Simpson to keep his three kids at the school. Miles was supposed to go away after he burned the school inadvertently in Firestarter, but he was back all willy nilly. Frankie seemed to not get punishment for the whole Degrassi um, poster thing. I mean, she should have got detention on that. I think they did get detention or something like that. But yeah, everyone was upset that Frankie was not getting any major punishments and should be punished worse. And Simpson's not taking accountability. And Hunter, like, he nearly shoots Maya. Thankfully, Miles cuts him off at the pass. And then Hunter goes to a rental facility and then is welcomed back into Degrassi with open arms. I think Hollingsworth put the pressure on Simpson. And I'm just saying. Anyway, number 3 on the list, who won the tiebreak, is Becky's parents. A very despicable thing they did. Telling Becky to lie to protect Luke made them major league hypocrites. So Becky and her brother Luke come up from Florida to Toronto so that Luke can play hockey for the Icehounds. And it was not a Degrassi school team. It was not a school team, as people assume. It isn't. It's what they call major junior. In Canada and parts of the United States as well, I think that the NCAA hockey thing is kind of the thing. But anyway, in major junior in Canada, there are 60 plus cities across Canada and parts of the United States that have these junior teams. And basically, if you do well enough, NHL scouts, the NHL being the big boys in North America, will decide to keep you around and draft you. And, you play for them and all that. Like Sidney Crosby was drafted by Rimouski, a major junior team in Rimouski, Quebec. I mean, Connor McDavid, actually, his major junior team was Erie in Pennsylvania. So that's just for context. But nevertheless, Becky was this Christian girl that basically rubbed people the wrong way, kind of in the whole Darcy vein from when Darcy was introduced, more so in season 5. But the fact of the matter was that, Becky was this goody goody, but then she actually falls in love with Adam, even though he's transgender, and her parents basically are disapproving of him. It's one thing to be disapproving of, but there's also an added nuance. Becky's dad is actually a minister, kind of like Shane's dad was a minister in Degrassi junior high, and basically he wanted to kick Shane to the curb so that he didn't have to deal with the kid and everything would be back to normal. Shane basically tells him, "You're only doing that because you want to basically save your own butts and all that. Let me be part of the kid." But of course, Shane's dad and Shane's mom had the foresight to send Shane to a mentally deficient place after his acid trip. Nevertheless, um, Becky finds out evidence that her brother Luke and his friend Neil had raped Zoe. Sorry for saying that, but that's the way it is. And, Becky decides to help Zoe out, get justice and all that for what Luke did. Despite the fact that Becky's parents were all over her trying to get her to say that she misunderstood and everything, Becky doesn't know what to do. She actually skips out on her testimony on one day, but then has to come back the next day. And then Luke tells her about this stuff, that you have a job for the family to do because I protected you after you dropped our grandmother's ring down the sink. But Becky said that may be so, but the next day I came and confessed. And then Luke told her everything. What was Becky supposed to do? Lie? No. Becky decides to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help her God. And that's what you're supposed to do as a Christian. So Becky tells everything. Luke and Neil are put in juvie, and Becky's parents basically are upset that she would not protect Luke and all that. A lot of people said it was the whole Christianity thing that, you have an honor to protect your parents. And yes, there is a commandment that says honor thy mother and thy father. But I mean, where does it say in the Bible to honor thy mother and thy father if they are trying to hide a rapist? The fact of the matter is that, Becky gets shunned. Becky's parents couldn't really kick her out, because they were probably worried that Becky would go to the police and maybe say something. I'm actually shocked that Becky didn't just turn on her parents, like all that. That's her Christian character. She could have easily thrown her parents under the bus, but she didn't. She turned the other cheek. I wish she had gone on their nerves and all that and destroyed them. But that's me. It's possible that Becky's dad actually may have lost his job as a minister because of the whole thing and all that. A lot of people also said that maybe Becky was told to protect Luke because, Luke would probably do the same for Becky. And, Luke's the golden child. I mean, after all, they are in Toronto because of Luke's hockey career. So that's that. All right. Number 2 on the list for the worst was Albert Manning, aka Craig's dad. I'm surprised that he didn't win number 1. I voted for him at number 1, but obviously I'm wrong. So what ends up happening is that in season 2, in When Doves Cry, we get introduced to Craig, who likes taking pictures of things and actually has some kind of unhealthy obsession with Angie, who is Julie's kid, and we don't know why. Unfortunately, Craig has a terrible home life. His father basically beats him up for no damn good reason and all that. Smashes Craig's camera and wants to give him money for a new one. Craig then decides to take the money and take Angie to BC with him. And that's an unhealthy thing. And Joey cuts off communication between Craig and Angie. However, the pieces come into play when Craig plays chicken with a train and Sean and Emma tell Joey about these things, that Craig basically is unstable because of his father beating him up. Joey understands, and then after we find out there's a familiar reference why Craig wants to be with Angie, mostly due to the fact that they share a mother, because Craig's mom Julia left Albert and Craig for Joey and had Angie, and that's possibly why Albert uses Craig as a punching bag, kind of an emotional punching bag, because he's upset that Julia left him, and basically he needs to do something about it, and goes after Craig, which is dumb in my book, and you know it. So anyhow, Craig doesn't know how to process things and all that. Craig seems to be doing well, and then Albert pops up in Tears Are Not Enough, the 2-part finale of season 2, and takes Craig back. But then after Craig misses a dinner date, Albert beats up on Craig and says these things. And Craig is like, a skunk doesn't change its stripes, or a leopard doesn't change its spots. So anyway, Albert then dies off screen in a car crash. Either he got so angry with everything that he crashed his car on purpose, or was victimized somehow. Wasn't watching where he was going. Anyway, Craig doesn't know how to process his dad's death. And practically, when Craig is given Luau King kind of a sympathy vote, I guess, he hallucinates his dad being in the audience and wants to go after his dad, tearing down posters and all that. And the kids wanted to stop him from doing stuff. And Raj, in his last appearance before he shaved off his Chuck Norris goatee, said, "No, let him have it out of his system." Terry helps him cope with his dad's death and all that, which is pretty sweet and given a good Terry moment. Unfortunately, Craig gets a little bit unbalanced in season 4. He has these manic things about and is diagnosed being bipolar and all that. And Snake told Joey the apple probably doesn't fall far from the tree and all that. And unfortunately, Craig must have had the bipolar thing like his dad. And number 1, the worst parent, and I can understand why, is Jane's dad. Jane's dad made an impact in only 2 episodes, a 2-parter. So the season 8 episode Jane says is when Jane's dad actually decides to get back into the family and all that. He left Jane's mom, Jane, and Lucas around. And basically what ends up happening is that Jane doesn't know why her father gives her the creeps, but then pieces fall together, and she reveals to Lucas that when she was being dressed by him for bedtime, he would kind of undress her and all that. I know I'm describing some terrible things. I shouldn't really. So anyway, I guess I could kind of say that, he kind of violated her. And that's not fun. The fact of the matter is that, what ends up happening is that Jane is uncomfortable with the way he conducted himself at bedtime with her. Lucas was in the other room, but like anyway, Lucas finally snaps out of his anger phase and realizes his dad is going uh have his way had his way with Jane and is possibly going to have his way with Isabella. So Lucas knows he has to protect Izzy at all costs and basically tells his dad, stay out of our lives and all that. Lucas then apologizes for everything to Jane, but Jane forgives him, saying that, you're here now and we were just kids. The worst part about it in my mind is that that's it for Lucas. No more appearances by him, not even a mention. Why the heck couldn't Jane just talk about Lucas? It doesn't make sense. That was crappy. That was the redemption arc I wanted to happen. But the fact of the matter is that, yeah, Lucas seemed to be bad. And, Jane's dad was just a terrible person. I mean, to do that to a child, ugh. We've seen some terrible parents, but I don't think Degrassi did they ever in before season 8 address a parent doing child abuse like that on their kid. I don't think they did. But to do what he did, ugh, that just gives me the creeps. And you know it. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.